The sand tasted like grit and regret. It coated everything, inside my mouth, under my eyelids, a fine, insidious powder that wormed its way into every crevice, every pore. Above me, the sun was a malevolent eye, staring down, judging. My tongue felt thick, swollen, useless. The weight on my chest, however, was far more oppressive than the desert heat. It wasn't just the sand burying me alive, inch by agonizing inch. It was the weight of failure. The weight of my brothers, scattered and broken around me, their silence a far more deafening roar than any explosion. Panic clawed at my throat, a desperate, silent scream. My fingers, cramped and useless, twitched against the coarse grains. I tried to remember my training, to focus, to breathe. But all I could see were flashes. The blinding flash of the RPG, the earth erupting in a fiery geyser, the screams cut short, the bodies flung like ragdolls. The acrid smell of burning metal and flesh clung to the air, a phantom scent that would haunt my dreams long after the sand had washed away. Washed away? A bitter laugh bubbled up, a strangled sound lost in the vast emptiness. There would be no washing away from this. This was it. The end. And then a sound. Faint, almost imperceptible, but there. A high-pitched whine, growing louder, closer. Hope, a fragile butterfly, fluttered in my chest. A rescue? A mirage? I squeezed my eyes shut, willing it to be real. The whine intensified, resolving into the unmistakable scream of a jet engine. Please, God, let them see me. Let them see us. The rumble vibrated through the sand, a promise of salvation, or perhaps, just a crueler form of torture. To be so close, and yet. The memory of the first time I saw the ocean crashed over me, a wave of salt and sunshine against the suffocating darkness. I was 8, maybe 9. We were visiting my Aunt Sarah in San Diego, a rare treat for a dirt-poor kid from Oklahoma. I remember the vastness of it, the endless horizon blurring into the sky, the sheer, untamed power of the waves crashing against the shore. My dad, a man of few words, had simply stood beside me, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder. I could feel the calluses on his palm, the warmth of his presence, a silent reassurance that everything was going to be all right. He wasn't a man for grand gestures or sentimental speeches. His love was in the small things, the way he always made sure I had enough to eat, the meticulous care he took of his tools, the quiet pride in his eyes when I brought home a good grade. He worked tirelessly, day in and day out, to provide for us, never complaining, never asking for anything in return. He was my hero, my anchor, the steady hand that guided me through the turbulent waters of childhood. He had wanted me to stay, to take over the farm. He didn't understand the pull, the yearning for something more than endless fields of wheat and corn. I remember the argument we had the day I signed up for the Marines. His face, usually etched with lines of quiet determination, was contorted with a pain I hadn't seen before. "Why, son?" he had asked, his voice cracking with emotion. "Why do you have to go so far away? Why do you have to risk your life?" I couldn't explain it then, not really. I couldn't articulate the restless energy that coursed through my veins, the burning desire to prove myself, to be something more than just a farmer's son. Now, buried in the sand, the answer seemed painfully clear. It wasn't about glory or adventure. It was about honor. About duty. About standing up for something bigger than myself. It was about being the kind of man my father had always been, a man of unwavering integrity, a man who never backed down from a challenge. A man who would stand by his brothers, no matter the cost. And now, the cost was everything. The jet screamed overhead, a fleeting moment of hope swallowed by the relentless silence. I closed my eyes, picturing my dad's face, his calloused hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words lost in the sand. "I'm sorry I didn't listen. I'm sorry I let you down." But even as the regret washed over me, a flicker of defiance remained. I was a Marine. And Marines don't give up. Not without a fight. The world exploded. Not in a fireball, not in a neat, Hollywood kind of way. It was a chaotic, deafening, all-encompassing eruption of sand and steel. The RPG found its mark. The Humvee in front of us disintegrated, a blossoming orange flower blooming in the perpetual beige. I remember a scream, cut short, swallowed by the roar. Then, the concussive wave hit. Everything went white. My ears rang, a high-pitched whine that threatened to shatter my skull. The Humvee lurched violently, throwing me against the armored door. I tasted blood. Dust, fine and gritty, filled my lungs, choking me. Through the haze, I saw Ramirez slumped over the wheel, his head lolling at an unnatural angle. Daniels was gone. Just gone. A gaping hole where he had been, a testament to the brutal efficiency of the ambush. Panic clawed at my throat. I fumbled for my rifle, my fingers clumsy and unresponsive. More gunfire erupted, tearing through the thin metal skin of the Humvee. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable. This was it. This was how it ended. Buried in sand, forgotten in a war nobody understood. Then, Sergeant Major Reyes' voice cut through the chaos, a guttural roar that snapped me back to reality. "Get your asses out! Move! Move! Move!" I scrambled out of the Humvee, adrenaline surging through my veins. The desert floor was a swirling vortex of sand and gunfire. I crawled on my belly, using the wreckage of the Humvee for cover. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning metal and cordite. I saw Reyes, a one-man army, laying down suppressing fire with his M240. He was a force of nature, a whirlwind of controlled fury. But even Reyes couldn't hold them off forever. The enemy was everywhere, shadows flitting between the dunes, their AK-47s spitting death. We were outnumbered, outgunned, and pinned down. I returned fire blindly, desperately, praying that I hit something, anything. Each pull of the trigger felt like a betrayal, a promise of more death in a land already saturated with it. Then I saw him. A young boy, no older than 12, emerging from behind a dune, an RPG launcher clutched in his small hands. His eyes were hard, devoid of innocence, filled with a hatred I couldn't comprehend. He raised the launcher, aiming directly at Reyes. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. I knew what I had to do. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I acted. I squeezed the trigger. The boy crumpled, a small, insignificant figure swallowed by the vastness of the desert. The RPG launcher clattered to the ground. The gunfire seemed to fade, replaced by a deafening silence. I stared at the boy's lifeless body, the image seared into my memory. A wave of nausea washed over me. I had taken a life. A child's life. To save Reyes. To save myself. The fighting continued, but I was no longer present. I was lost in the abyss of my own conscience, haunted by the ghost of the boy in the sand. The rest of the ambush was a blur, a chaotic dance of death and survival. We somehow managed to hold them off until the QRF arrived, their armored vehicles roaring onto the scene, scattering the enemy like dust in the wind. We were alive. But I was broken. The desert wind whispers secrets now, secrets only I can hear. They tell me I'm a hero. They tell me I did what I had to do. But the silence screams louder. It echoes in the empty spaces of my apartment, in the sterile halls of the VA hospital, in the hollow stares of my own reflection. I wake up screaming most nights. The boy's face, contorted in pain and surprise, is the first thing I see. The scent of burning metal and cordite fills my nostrils. The feel of the trigger, cold and unforgiving, is forever etched into my finger. Therapy helps, they say. Talking about it helps, they say. But how do you talk about the unspeakable? How do you explain the weight of a life taken, the burden of a decision made in the blink of an eye? How do you reconcile the soldier you were with the man you are now? I try. I really do. I attend the group sessions, listen to the stories of other veterans, men and women scarred by their own demons. I share my own story, haltingly, reluctantly, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. They nod, they understand, they offer words of comfort and support. But their words are hollow, empty gestures in the face of the vast, unfillable void within me. I see her sometimes, in the park, pushing a stroller. A young woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. She reminds me of my sister, the one I haven't spoken to in years. I want to approach her, to tell her my story, to confess my sins. But I can't. I'm afraid. Afraid of what she'll think, afraid of what I'll see in her eyes. Pity? Disgust? Condemnation? So I remain silent. I watch her from a distance, a ghost haunting the edges of her life. I imagine what it would be like to have a family, to have children of my own. But the image is always tainted, overshadowed by the ghost of the boy in the sand. The desert took more than just bodies that day. It took my innocence, my peace of mind, my very soul. It left me buried in sand and silence, a prisoner of my own memories. And I don't know if I'll ever escape. The sun bled crimson onto the dunes as Lena cradled Elias's head, his breathing shallow and ragged. The morphine was buying them time, but time was a currency they were rapidly running out of. She pressed her forehead against his, the grit of the desert a constant reminder of their brutal reality. "Elias, stay with me," she whispered, her voice cracking. His eyes flickered open, a faint spark of recognition in their depths. "Lena," he rasped, his voice barely audible. The water, give it to them." He gestured weakly towards the remaining canteen, its metal glinting in the dying light. Lena hesitated, knowing how little they had left, but seeing the unwavering conviction in his eyes, she nodded. She called out to Omar and the others, offering them the water. Omar approached cautiously, his face etched with suspicion, but thirst ultimately won. They drank sparingly, their gratitude evident in their weary eyes. As the last drops were consumed, Omar knelt beside Lena and Elias. "He is a good man," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "He saved us all." Elias smiled faintly, a ghost of his former self. We are all just trying to survive." The night descended, cold and unforgiving. Lena sat vigil, her hand clasped tightly in Elias's. The stars blazed overhead, indifferent to their plight. She thought of her training, of the countless simulations she had aced, none of which could have prepared her for this raw, brutal reality. As the first rays of dawn kissed the horizon, Elias's breathing grew shallower still. He squeezed Lena's hand, his grip weakening. "Lena, the locket," he whispered, his voice fading. "Give it to my sister, tell her." "I tried." Lena reached into his pocket, her fingers fumbling with the worn leather. She pulled out a small, silver locket. Inside, a tiny picture of a young woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. "I will," she promised, her voice choked with tears. "I promise." Elias closed his eyes, a peaceful expression settling on his face. His grip loosened, and his hand went limp. Lena held him close, her body racked with sobs. The desert wind howled around them, a mournful lament for a life lost too soon. Omar placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch gentle and respectful. He spoke softly, his words a balm to her grief. "We will bury him with honor. He deserves it." They dug a grave in the sand, a final resting place beneath the endless sky. They wrapped Elias in his poncho, his dog tags gleaming in the morning light. Lena placed the locket in his hand, a tangible link to the life he had left behind. As they lowered him into the earth, Lena spoke, her voice clear and strong despite her grief. "Elias, you were a warrior, a friend, and a hero. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten." They filled the grave, the sand a silent testament to their shared loss. Omar marked the spot with a makeshift cairn of stones, a beacon in the desolate landscape. Later, as they continued their journey, Lena walked beside Omar, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The desert stretched before them, an endless expanse of sand and silence. But within that silence she heard Elias's voice, a quiet reminder of the courage and compassion that had defined his life. She knew that she would carry his memory with her always, a guiding light in the darkness. She would deliver the locket. She would tell his sister he tried. And she would live her life in a way that honored his sacrifice, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, even in the face of unimaginable loss. The sun beat down, the journey was far from over, but Lena walked on, forever changed by the sand, the silence, and the marine berry beneath. The weight of the locket in her pocket was a burden and a promise. Elias's story would be told.